Good evening, everybody. I'm Cynthia from Empower to Free. Welcome to today's session of Is Finding Meaningful Job Important? Thank you for everybody for coming along to today's session. Today I have Vanessa with me from New Hope Community Services, who will be sharing her story. Let's welcome Vanessa, and thank you for being here today. Could you please share your story, Vanessa, to everybody?
Thanks, Cynthia. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa. I am a social worker and knowledge manager here at New Hope Community Services. I think most people, maybe you've heard of what a social worker is, but are maybe a bit more confused about what a knowledge manager is. Basically, what my role is here at New Hope, right, is that I do case management. So I work with clients, as well as I do some research and sort of collect and analyze information, and that's where like the knowledge management comes in. Because I think when you are working in a shelter, okay, so just some background about New Hope Community Services. New Hope Community Services is a social service agency that supports the homeless and displaced community here in Singapore. So our organization operates 4 shelters. We call them transitional shelters because it's transiting from homelessness out into a long-term sustainable housing. Yeah, so we operate 4 shelters, and in fact, I'm in one of our shelters right now, which is where I'm based at. And over here, we work with clients to obtain long-term housing. So the clients that we serve are actually staying in our shelter, and we are in very close proximity to them. Like they can look for us anytime when we're in the office. Yeah, so as I was saying about knowledge management, I think sometimes it's not just about like ground, like face-to-face work, but it's also about planning for programs, planning for perhaps a different style of intervention. And that part on like research does inform our practice a little bit. Yeah, so that's what I do here at New Hope. It's been about a year and one month since I started working. This is my first job. I graduated last year from uni. And I graduated with a major in social work and a minor in psychology. In fact, social work was never on my agenda growing up because I never knew what social work was until I finished, I think it was my first semester in university. Yeah, so what happened was that when I was in JC, I was interning at a hospital at NUH, and I was very inspired by the doctors. And I saw like, whoa, they get to do so many like good things, quite fun, you know, you can use all the tools and things like that. And I thought that I wanted to be a doctor. Yeah, so as I was doing my internship, I also got to know this professor who encouraged me to be a doctor as well, like when I studied medicine. But when I got my A-level results, I think my results were just not good enough to get into medicine. So I was talking to him, I said like, oh, I can't do medicine now, you know, is there anything that you can do to help me? And then he said, why don't you do like a post-grad degree at is it Duke, NUS? Yeah, I think that's where you can get like a post-grad degree in medicine. And then I said, okay. And at that point in time, I also had a interest in psychology because I wanted to work with people and I wanted to do groundwork. I didn't want to be in office. I didn't want to be cooped up in like a small cell. Yeah, I wanted to be on the ground, out and about. And I thought psychology could provide me that. So with this in mind, I went into university thinking like, okay, let me study psychology. After I finish 4 years of psychology, then I will go and study medicine at Duke. You know, but as I took my first psychology module, I realized that it was so difficult for me. Like I just did not have that passion or the interest to study what was being taught, you know, and what I thought was social work at that point in time in terms of psychology just wasn't doing it for me. And so I shared it with my dad. Yeah, and my dad actually does, he's involved in the social service sector on a voluntary basis. So he actually told me like, hey, why don't you try social work? You know, because he has interacted with social workers before. And I think he knew that that was what I wanted, like what kind of job description, what kind of job role it was encompassed in social work. So he told me like, why don't you try social work? And so I said, okay, I know they offer social work at NUS. Let me just go and take a module to clear some of my elective mods. So I took social work and I realized that, whoa, this was the thing I was looking for that I thought I could find in psychology. Yeah, so after I took my first social work module, I just did not look back. I continued like with social work, and by that time I already finished too many modules for psychology, so I made it a minor. But that was how I got into into social work is really by chance thing. I think if I didn't have the conversation, or if I had found more interest and passion in psychology, I would have finished psychology, but it worked out well. Yeah, and how I got into New Hope actually was I did my second internship here at New Hope. At that point in time, I didn't know homelessness existed in Singapore. I didn't even know like there were shelters in Singapore. So when the school gave us this list of places that you could do your internship at, I read it and I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know there were shelters here. And so I applied and I got in. And when I started the work, I realized that, whoa, there's actually so many needs that are not met, because maybe there are not enough workers. And at that point in time, it was COVID season as well. So, you know that we had an influx of Malaysians who were stranded in Singapore, right? Which was why like we suddenly had so many rough sleepers outside. So when I got into the shelter, they literally just set it up to meet this need. And as I did the work, I realized that, well, so many of my like thoughts I had about homelessness, stereotypes that were really influenced by like media, was really debunked. And I realized that, well, these people are people with stories. They are people who have gone through a journey and perhaps fallen into difficult times. And so I found that it was something really meaningful to me. I felt that as a social worker working with this population, could yield tangible results as well, not just like social emotional benefits, but really helping them obtain housing, which I believe everyone should have. Yeah, so that's how I got into social work, and that's how I got into New Hope as well. My second portfolio just complements the work that I do on the ground. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Vanessa. We're going to open it to the floor now. So if any participants have any questions to Vanessa, feel free to type it in the chat or even just unmute yourself and you can straightaway ask the question. Does anybody have any questions you would like to ask Vanessa while we're here? I'll just ask Vanessa a question in the meantime. Maybe I'll give people a few minutes to just think if they have any questions. Would you be able to share like what makes you keep going in this job, like energy giving moments, those kind of things?
Okay. I think the most practical reason why I'm still in this job is because I have a bond. Yeah, I am bonded for 3 years. So I just finished my first year. But jokes aside, I think I really do enjoy this space with my colleagues as well. I think the colleagues that I work with are really people who edify me, who encourage me. And I had my doubts coming in as a young, like fresh graduate, but they've been so encouraging and helpful. And I think that the environment that I'm in really supports me and motivates me to continue in this space. Aside from that, I think that forming real relationships with the clients that I'm working with has also been a big motivator. I think sometimes it's difficult, when they're struggling and you don't have anything that you can offer, but there are times where celebration comes, when like a breakthrough comes in terms of like getting a house, finally hearing a reply from HDB, or like finally having a breakthrough in certain aspects, maybe like finding a lawyer for clients who had no means of affording a lawyer for their divorce. I think all these things were small celebratory moments that I really cherished. And I think they helped me to see that apart from all the difficulties and challenges that were around in like the space I'm in, there are moments to be grateful for. And also for myself, I think that I have gained a lot of perspective. I feel like I'm better able to live a life bigger than myself, because there's just so many things out there that extend beyond like my own needs or like my own wants, so I guess these are small things that motivate me and keep me in this work. Yeah.
Thanks, Vanessa, for answering that question. So we've actually got 2 questions popped into the chat. So the first one was actually from Mei Yi asking, thanks for sharing, Vanessa. Did you face any obstacles when deciding to go into social work?
Okay, great question. I think for me, I'm blessed that my parents are very supportive. In fact, it was my dad who encouraged me to go to social work. because he knew that that was what I was looking for. But on the other hand, my mom, who was a little bit more practical, I guess, she was a bit concerned. She did say like, are you sure you want to do this? My family also, my relatives have said like, you need to be careful, you need to be able to take care of yourself, don't burn out, like don't give all you have and then like burn out, and then in the end you're just going to suffer and then you're not able to help. Yeah, so I guess these are some advice that I got. I would say I didn't really have any tangible obstacles, but there are some reflections I do have that perhaps could be counted as obstacles. So for instance, to be very frank, the social sector does not pay as well as other sectors, be it like IT, sales, business, and sometimes I do think about that, especially when I see my friends who graduated at the same time as me, they draw a higher salary. It makes me think like, oh, I feel like I'm giving so much, I'm doing so many things, and yet like the sort of like the rewards for it are not as great as someone who might be doing less. So these are some like thoughts that I've had, but I think in this space that I'm in, where I don't have to worry about raising a family or yeah, I think things like that, like it helps me to really make my decisions as well. Like perhaps this is still the space that I'm supposed to be in. I'm able to practically meet the needs for myself and things like that. But I think in the long term, these will be some of my considerations on whether I continue staying in this job or not. Yeah, but I guess obstacles wise, not many, but in terms of longevity, then maybe there are a bit more like considerations that I have in mind. Yeah, but I hope I answered your question, Mei Yi.
Thank you for the thumbs up, Yi, and thank you for answering those questions. So we've actually got two questions from Sydney. So the first one was asking how did you overcome stepping out of your comfort zone if it was difficult at the beginning, since homelessness was something foreign?
Good question. Thanks for your question, Sydney. I think it was really by chance that I saw that, hey, there's this homeless shelter, and it was a safe space as well to go in because I was an intern then. I was just a student, so I didn't really have to do much of the direct work. In fact, I was just shadowing. Yeah, and in the shadowing, I learned a lot. And definitely like my first few cases, it was scary because I felt so like inadequate. Like I'm a fresh grad, I literally know nothing. You are maybe a 50-plus-year-old who have gone through so many things in life. I don't even know like many things about HDB as well. Like literally, I still don't know all the different types of housing and all. But I think what helped me was to reframe my perspectives. Like when I went in to meet every client that I saw, I think I was mindful to make sure that I was being my authentic self and being genuine in the interactions. Because I've learned that sometimes it's not about what you can do for the client or how much you can give or how much they can obtain that brings joy to them, but it's really about the relationship, the authenticity of it. And I think it helped, as mentioned, that my colleagues were very helpful. So they did help to sort of ease me into the process of meeting clients, because it can be quite intimidating. I've had clients shout at me for no rhyme or reason, and then I went back to the office and cried, and things like that. But I think it's a learning process, and it really just take it one step at a time. I think there's nothing that is really forcing me to do anything outside of my comfort zone, but taking that small steps out, I think is what helps me to learn. And yeah.
I'm glad to hear that you have very good colleagues that help you kind of, yeah. And then the second part of Vanessa's question, she actually thanked for sharing very inspiring sharings. And then she said, what kind of growth, personal and career, do you foresee in your bond and beyond?
Oh, thank you. Wait, who asked this question?
Oh, Sydney, sorry.
Oh, Sydney. Oh, that's a great question. I think recently, what I was thinking about, right, is how to integrate other sectors with the social sector. I honestly believe that the social sector cannot thrive on its own unless it collaborates with maybe corporates, for instance. Yeah, so that's something I'm thinking about. Perhaps if I feel like the time is right, I might venture into that. But for now, I'll be staying. Yeah. Yeah, I think collaborations wise and seeing how we can innovate the social sector. I don't think it's just about the traditional casework anymore. I do think that as time goes by, we also have to start changing the methods that we use. So I guess these are interests that I have. But definitely for the time being, it's really about sharpening my clinical skills, perhaps, and we'll see how it goes in after the next 2 years. Maybe I'll go and do a master's or something, or expand my horizons overseas. I think it really depends on like how things go in the next few years.
Thank you, Vanessa. So we actually have one more question from Rachel, where she's asking, how do you differentiate between feeling empathy and pity or sympathy for your clients?
Thanks, Rachel. Oh, that's a good question, because they always tell us, right? Like if you're working with clients, don't pity them, be empathetic. And then we've all watched that video of what empathy looks like. It's like crawling down a hole and being with that person in that space and not just offering them the silver lining. I think this is something that I'm learning as well. There are definitely times that I feel pity to my clients because they are very helpless. But I think what differentiates empathy and pity is really like being in the same space. To hear them out first, to pace with them. It's quite, I don't think the distinction is so clear-cut, because we're all humans, right? And I think we do have a limit on how much empathy we can give. But I think, I mean, what I hope I'm doing for empathy-wise is really pacing with the clients, not offering them a solution that is bigger than what they can reach, and also giving space, creating a safe space for them to offer their own solutions as well, or offer their own thoughts as well. I think how I see pity, if I would describe it in tangible terms, right? How I would see pity is that, oh, let me dictate what you should do now, and like, oh, you should go to the communities center and get your SingPass done, On the other hand, empathy is more of like, oh, perhaps we could do this together, what can I do to help you, or what do you think would help you in this point in time, and let's see how we can achieve it together. I think the difference maybe would be the togetherness or like the separateness. I think empathy is more of like a relationship, encompasses it comes in a relationship, while pity comes from a lack of relationship, and maybe thinking that you know better than them. Yeah, that's a hard question actually.
Yeah, that was a really good question.
Yeah.
I really like your answer on the your differentiation between empathy and sympathy. That was really good. Well, we'll conclude this session with 3 rapid fire questions to Vanessa that I'll ask. So the first one is, would you be able to share with us a common misconception that people have about working in the social service sector?
Okay, I think first thing that comes to mind, people always think that social workers are volunteers, or like anyone can be a social worker. I think that is wrong. That is totally false. In fact, social workers all have to get a degree. Even if you have a diploma from a polytechnic for social work, you are not a social worker then. You are perhaps a social work associate or an assistant. I think social work as a profession is not just about helping in like, oh, let's do this for you, let's do that for you. It's not prescriptive type of work. In fact, it's a very collaborative work, I would say. And it's really not just about helping clients, but navigating systems as well. I think in a society, we don't just exist as like in our own circle. We exist within communities and within a larger society, within a government. And how, for instance, at COVID-19, it wasn't just a Singapore thing, it was a global thing, and COVID-19 affected the borders between Malaysia and Singapore, and that affected the community because we saw that so many people were stranded. They didn't have a house in Singapore. I think social workers need to know about current affairs, things happening outside, and we need to be able to navigate through these things. So as compared to a volunteer where it's like, oh, I just come and go, a social worker stays. Yeah, and a social worker does need to have certain skill sets, certain knowledge, in order to benefit or like serve the clients that we serve. Yeah, so this is the first thing that comes to mind. I think in my sector, sorry, not my sector, like in the space that I'm working at, in with homeless, people do still have stereotypes towards the homeless. So for instance, people think that they're dangerous, people think that they're lazy, they're dirty, this and that. I think that could not be further from the truth. I mean, yes, there is a small population of people who fit that kind of stereotypes, but for the majority of it, there are people here who have a degree. There are people here there are some doctors as well, businessmen, musicians. I think when we talk about clients, it's not just talking about what situation they're in, but really seeing them as a person. And I think that's something I would like to just emphasize, that our clients are more than just their problems, but they are really people who have lives, they have stories, and they have achievements as well. Yeah, so I think when people think about social work, it's like, oh, you're helping a helpless cause, but no, these people have strength. And yeah, I think that would be what I would say.
That's lovely. And then the next question, could you share with everybody just one advice that you would give to anyone planning to work in the social service sector?
Okay, I think talk to more people. One thing that I really enjoy is I like hearing stories and I like telling stories, because I feel like stories bring out not just the facts of it, but it brings out like the emotions. It tells you about the realities of it. And I think if you're interested in joining the social sector, don't be afraid to reach out to someone who's already in the social sector. I think that they will provide you a very realistic, very authentic opinion and view of what it's like, not just about the cases that they're handling, but also systems. Like I never knew that it was so difficult to navigate certain systems and so many barriers. And that can be quite frustrating. But if I had been able to talk to someone who had experienced this before me, I think I would have gotten a more realistic idea and not just a romanticized idea. Because I think like coming in also, I just felt like, wow, this is such a noble job. Like I'm going to do so many good things. So many people are going to benefit. But actually, there is a lot of like hidden work that is not seen. So for instance, like social services, it's not just about helping others. It's not just about going on the ground and like meeting people and like solving problems, but there's a lot of paperwork as well, because we are accountable to funders. Yeah, so I think this was not something I knew until I came in, because I didn't have people to talk to for that. But if you're interested, like just be brave, be bold to talk to people who are in it, and also just read up more. I think nowadays there are more like on social media, there's so much information out there, like just go and search and seek out people to hear.
Oh, sorry about that. I was talking to Rachel. So she's just left because she had to go for a meeting, but she thanked both you and us for hosting the meeting. So yeah, just to conclude, one last question. Lastly, what is finding meaningful work important?
Yes, I would say finding meaningful work is definitely important. I think when I go home, okay, so meaningful work doesn't just come when you feel like you're doing something meaningful, or like you say, okay, social work equal meaningful. I don't think it comes like that. Sometimes when I go home, I think about all the challenges that I face, all the difficult clients that I meet, and sometimes I just feel so drained, but it takes some reflection to really see like to know that the work, or like the part that I'm playing, the small role that I'm playing, right, benefits that one person. And to me, that is what meaningfulness means. Yeah, so I do think that it's meaningful because it just gives you a sense of purpose. Yeah, for me, social work gives me a sense of purpose because I'm able to contribute to a cause that is bigger than myself. Yeah, so that's why I find it meaningful. But for someone else, it could be, if I'm in the corporate world, and I'm making big money, but this money is used for my family, to give them a good life, and that's meaningful to you, then that's your definition of meaningfulness. And I think that's great. So it's important to love what you do, but also yeah, just be open. Yeah, because you may not find it in social work, but you may find it in somewhere else. Yeah, for me, for now, I'm finding it in social work. So that's what I would say. But definitely meaningful work is important for your well-being, for your welfare. And I think yeah, I think go do what you find meaningful. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I think that was a very beautiful answer in terms of finding meaningful work. And thank you so much also for sharing your story with us. We've come to the end of the session. I hope everybody enjoyed the session today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you guys for taking a Thursday night out.